What if becoming closer to God didn't begin with one extraordinary moment, but with a few simple habits practiced every single day? Carlo Acutis didn't become a saint because he was perfect. He became extraordinary because of the small choices he made when no one was watching. In this video, you'll discover the daily habits that transformed his life, and one of them may surprise you. Stay with me until the very end, because the final habit is the one Carlo believed could completely change your relationship with God. Because if you strip away the miracles and the Vatican paperwork and the title saint, what's left is something almost uncomfortable in how simple it is. Carlo Acutis didn't fast for 40 days in a desert. He didn't have visions of angels appearing at the foot of his bed. He played Pokémon. He edited videos on an old computer that crashed constantly. He got annoyed at his little sister sometimes. He was, in almost every visible way, a normal kid. The difference was in what he did every single day, quietly, when nobody was filming it, when there was no reason to think any of it mattered beyond that afternoon. Stay with me here, because this isn't going to be one of those stories where a saint is presented as some untouchable, otherworldly figure you could never actually be like. This is going to be the opposite. By the end of this, you're going to look at your own daily life, the boring, repetitive, unremarkable parts of it, completely differently. Milan, early 1990s. Carlo was born in London in 1991, but his family moved back to Milan when he was still a baby, and that's where the story really begins. Picture an ordinary Italian apartment. Both his parents worked. Neither of them, by their own later admission, was particularly devout. Church for them was Christmas, Easter, maybe a wedding here or there. Nobody in that household was praying rosaries at the dinner table. So where did it come from? Here's the detail that gets skipped over too fast. Carlo was maybe 3 or 4 years old when he started asking his nanny, a woman named Beata, who happened to be a devout Catholic and later a Polish nun, to take him into churches. Not because his parents told him to, not because it was Sunday and everyone was going. He asked. A toddler, tugging at an adult's sleeve, wanting to go inside a building full of candles and silence, and something he couldn't name yet. His mother has talked about this in interviews, and you can hear the bewilderment still in her voice decades later. She said she wasn't a church-going woman at that point in her life, and yet her small son kept gravitating toward the Eucharist, like it was pulling him, like there was a string attached to his chest, and something on the other end kept tugging. Now, you could brush this off as a cute childhood quirk. Kids like shiny things, kids like ritual, kids like candles. Sure, except this quirk didn't fade. It didn't get replaced by a fascination with dinosaurs or trains the way most childhood obsessions do. It grew roots. And that's the first thing worth sitting with. The habit that eventually defined his whole short life didn't start as a discipline he forced on himself. It started as a hunger he couldn't explain and refused to ignore. Ask yourself honestly, how many times in your own life have you felt that same quiet pull toward something good, something true, and talked yourself out of it because it seemed inconvenient, or embarrassing, or not really for me? Carlo, at 3 years old, had less reason to trust that pull than you do right now, and he followed it anyway. The habit nobody talks about enough, By the time he made his first communion at age 7, as early as canon law would allow, because he asked for it that early, Carlo had already built something most adults never manage in a lifetime: a daily rhythm. Every single day, he went to Mass. Not every Sunday, every day. Think about what that actually requires for a kid. It's not glamorous. There's no algorithm rewarding you for it. No one clapping, no highlight reel. It's waking up a little earlier. It's walking, or being driven somewhere before school starts. It's sitting still in a quiet room while your friends are doing literally anything else. For a boy who also loved computers, loved animals, loved making people laugh, Mass wasn't a punishment squeezed into his schedule. He treated it like fuel. He once said, in words that have been repeated so often now, they've almost become his signature line, that the Eucharist was his highway to heaven, not a chore, a road he wanted to be on. And here's what made it stick. For 14 straight years of a 15-year life, he didn't wait to feel like it. Anyone who's tried to build any kind of daily discipline, prayer, exercise, writing, anything, knows the real enemy isn't a single hard day. It's the 40th day, the day when the newness is gone and the feeling has evaporated, and all that's left is the choice itself. Carlo made that choice on ordinary Tuesdays in Milan for over a decade, long before anyone thought to call him holy. Alongside the daily Mass, he prayed the Rosary, every day, without exception, according to those closest to him. He went to confession weekly, not because he'd done something scandalous, but because he treated small sins the way a careful person treats small cracks in a foundation. Deal with them now, before they become something bigger. He read scripture. He spent time in Eucharistic adoration, sometimes for long stretches, just sitting in stillness in front of the tabernacle. None of this made him a hermit. This is the part people get wrong when they imagine a holy teenager. Carlo wasn't withdrawn from the world. He was, by every account from friends, teachers, and family, hilarious. He did impressions. He loved animals so much, he kept a small zoo of pets at different points. Cats, a parrot, fish. He played video games, and not casually either. He was genuinely good, and he negotiated with his parents over screen time limits, the way every kid on Earth has negotiated over screen time limits. He wasn't a monk in a child's body. He was a kid who happened to build a granite foundation underneath a completely normal life. That's the first real lesson hiding in this story, and it's worth pausing on. The habits that shape a life are rarely dramatic. They're the same 15 minutes, repeated on purpose, on the days you don't feel like it. The turning point, his eyes opened to who was invisible around him. Here's where the story shifts from devout kid to something that actually changed the direction of his short life. As Carlo got a little older, 9, 10, 11, something happened that his mother describes almost like a light switching on. He started to notice suffering. Not suffering in the abstract, not the poor as a category in a homily. He started noticing the specific, individual, uncomfortable presence of people who were hurting right in front of him. People everyone else had trained themselves not to see. There's a story that's been told and retold by people who knew him, and it's worth telling slowly because it's the hinge the whole story turns on. Carlo began seeking out homeless people in Milan, not to hand them a coin from a moving car window, but to actually stop, to talk, to ask their names. He started bringing sleeping bags to people sleeping rough in the cold. He'd ask his mother to help him buy food specifically for someone he'd met and remembered. Not the homeless as a faceless mass, but a particular man on a particular corner. Why does this matter as a turning point? Because up until this point in the story, everything about Carlo's holiness could be read as private and personal. His own relationship with the Eucharist, his own prayers, his own soul. Beautiful, but contained. What happened here is that his faith stopped being only vertical, him and God, and became horizontal too. It started reaching sideways, into other people's actual pain. This is the moment his mother later said reshaped her own life, not just his. She's spoken about how watching her son treat a stranger on the street with the same seriousness and attention he gave to the Eucharist made her ask what exactly she'd been missing all those years she considered herself a normal, moderately faithful adult. A 10-year-old was quietly outperforming her on compassion, and he wasn't doing it to prove anything. He didn't know anyone was watching closely enough to be changed by it. That's the turning point. Not a vision, not a miracle. A boy who took what he received at the altar seriously enough that it walked out of the church with him and refused to stay behind when Mass ended. And this connects directly to the next chapter of his life, the one most people actually know him for. The computer, the internet, and a very strange mission for a kid in the early 2000s. Carlo was, by every description, a natural with computers. At a time, the late 1990s into the early 2000s, when that wasn't the universal norm it is now. He taught himself programming. He was fascinated by how software worked, how you could build something out of nothing but logic and code. And somewhere around age 11, he had an idea that, frankly, sounds almost absurd for a kid that age. He decided to build a website cataloging Eucharistic miracles from around the world. Documented, historically verified accounts. Cases going back centuries, across dozens of countries, where something extraordinary was reported to have happened around the consecrated host. He spent roughly 2 years researching, organizing, translating, and building this out, essentially doing the work of a museum curator and a web developer at once, using nothing but a computer in his own home and an enormous amount of quiet, unglamorous effort. Think about that from the outside for a second, without the halo. An 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, instead of spending every free hour purely on games or television, chooses to spend 2 years of his limited childhood building a digital archive about something most of his classmates had never even heard of. Nobody assigned this. No teacher graded it. There was no app store, no YouTube monetization, no algorithm to reward the labor. He built it because he believed the thing he loved most deserved to be understood. And he had a skill nobody else his age was using that way. That website, expanded later into a traveling exhibition that has now been displayed in thousands of parishes across more than 20 countries, is arguably the single largest visible legacy of his short life. Millions of people who will never read a biography of Carlo Acutis have stood in front of panels from that exhibition in some parish hall in their own town, learning about their faith because a kid who died before he could legally drive spent his after-school hours coding. Here's what's worth sitting with, though, and it ties directly back to the daily habits we've been talking about. That exhibition didn't come from nowhere. It came from a kid who had already, years earlier, built the daily discipline of showing up, to Mass, to prayer, to the Eucharist, before he had any big public mission at all. The website wasn't the beginning of his devotion. It was the overflow of it. He didn't start with the internet project and then discover faith along the way. He'd already spent years quietly filling something up inside himself, and eventually it spilled outward into something the whole world could see. That order matters. Most of us do it backward. We chase the big visible project, the platform, the audience, the achievement, hoping it'll eventually make us into someone disciplined and good on the inside. Carlo built the inside first, for years, with no audience at all, and the visible thing came later, almost as a byproduct. The illness, and the days that actually made him a saint. In early October 2006, Carlo started feeling unwell. Fatigue. What seemed at first like a normal flu. Within days, doctors diagnosed him with acute promyelocytic leukemia, an extremely aggressive form of the disease. Within about a week of that diagnosis, he was gone. October 12th, 2006, 15 years old. This is usually where these stories get sentimental, in a way that flattens what actually happened. So let's slow down and be specific, because the details here are the whole point. According to people who were with him, Carlo, upon learning how serious his illness was, said something to the effect that he offered up his suffering for the Pope and for the Church. A teenager, told he is likely dying, chooses in that moment to think about other people's needs rather than only his own fear. That's not a reflex you develop in a hospital bed over a few days. That's a reflex you build over years of habitually orienting yourself outward, toward the Eucharist, toward the man on the street corner, toward whoever needed something more than he did in that moment. He reportedly also said he was happy to die because he felt he had already lived his life the way he wanted to live it, that he had no regrets, because from the time he was a small child, he had never wasted a single day. Read that again. Never wasted a single day. Not never sinned. Not never made a mistake. Never wasted a day, meaning every day. Even the boring Tuesdays. Even the days doing homework. Even the days negotiating video game time with his parents had been used for something that mattered to him, on purpose. That's the line that should genuinely unsettle you, in a good way. Because most of us reach the end of an ordinary Tuesday having barely noticed it happened. We scroll, we complain, we let the day pass through us instead of doing anything with it. This kid, at 15, facing death within days, had no regret about how he'd spent his time, because the habits were already in place, day after day, for over a decade. There was nothing to scramble to fix at the last minute. He'd already been doing the work. He was buried, at his own prior wish, in Assisi, the town of St. Francis, whom he deeply admired, rather than in Milan where he'd lived his whole life. In 2019, his body was exhumed for the process of beatification and found to be remarkably incorrupt. It was later dressed in the jeans, the polo shirt, and the Nike sneakers he actually wore in life, and placed in a glass tomb where pilgrims now come from every corner of the world. In 2020, he was beatified. In 2025, he was canonized, the first millennial saint, the first saint whose visible legacy includes an actual website he coded himself. The lesson underneath all of it. So what's the actual takeaway here? Stripped of the drama, it's this. Sainthood, in Carlo's case, wasn't built from one extraordinary moment. It was built from an unremarkable daily rhythm, repeated with total consistency, for years, without an audience. Daily mass, daily rosary, regular confession, real attention paid to real people who were suffering, not as an abstract category but as individuals with names, and a willingness to use whatever specific skill he had, in his case coding, not for himself, but for something bigger than himself. None of that requires being a genius. None of that requires being a prodigy. Plenty of 11-year-olds are good with computers. Plenty of kids have kind impulses toward homeless people they meet. What set Carlo apart wasn't a superpower. It was consistency, applied quietly, for years, before anyone was watching, before there was any reward for it, beyond the thing itself. And that's genuinely available to you, right now, today, whatever your age. Not the coding project, not the exact same path, but the same underlying architecture. Something small, repeated daily, on purpose, oriented toward God and toward the people around you who are actually suffering, rather than the ones easiest to ignore. A 5-minute prayer that becomes 10 years of 5-minute prayers. A decision to actually stop and talk to the person everyone else walks past. A refusal to let a single ordinary day simply evaporate unused. Carlo Acutis didn't have 80 years. He had 15, and at the end of them, he said he had no regrets, because he never wasted a single day. Most of us have far more time left than he ever got. The only real question is whether we're going to use it the way he did. One small, repeated, unglamorous habit at a time. Or let it pass through our hands the way water passes through open fingers. Lord, thank you for the witness of St. Carlo Acutis, for showing us that holiness isn't reserved for the extraordinary, but is built quietly, day by day, in the ordinary moments of an ordinary life. Help me not to waste the days you've given me, where Carlo found the discipline to show up for you. Daily, give me even a small portion of that same faithfulness, where he found the courage to see the suffering person in front of him instead of looking away. Open my eyes the same way, where he used what he had, his time, his skills, his attention, for something greater than himself. Teach me to do the same with what you've placed in my hands. Saint Carlo Acutis, pray for us. that we may live our ordinary days on purpose, the way you lived yours, and that when our own time comes, we too might say we wasted none of it. Amen.